So here's the thing. I never thought I'd be the person writing one of these long-winded AITA posts, but my situation has gotten so bizarre and emotionally tangled that I don't even know how to process it anymore. And if I don't vent it out somewhere, I'm probably going to lose my mind. I, 28M, worked in my parents' business for almost a decade. It wasn't just a job, it was the family dream. My dad started the company before I was born, and my mom joined him as soon as I was old enough to go to school. When I was a teenager, I was already doing summer shifts, running errands, shadowing the managers. By the time I graduated college with a degree in business management, the plan was simple. I'd officially join the company, work my way up, and one day inherit the reins. My parents told me for years that I was the future of the company. For context, the company isn't some tiny mom-and-pop shop. It's a regional supplier in a niche market, steady income. About 50 employees, respectable local reputation. Nothing flashy, but enough to support my entire family comfortably. So when I say I put my entire life into this business, I mean it. I sacrificed opportunities to work elsewhere, declined other job offers, and even ended a relationship because my ex didn't like that I worked 60-hour weeks. I kept telling myself it was worth it because this was our company, our family legacy. Except apparently it wasn't. 3 months ago, out of nowhere, my parents called me into their office. I thought maybe they wanted to talk about me taking on more responsibility, or maybe even discuss partial ownership. Instead, they dropped a bombshell. They told me they had to let me go. At first, I laughed because I thought they were joking. But no. My own parents, people who had always promised me this business would be my inheritance, fired me. Their reasoning? We need to cut expenses, and you're one of the highest salaries. Mind you, I wasn't some overpaid executive draining the budget. I was basically running day-to-day operations, supervising several departments, and handling the exact kind of logistical nightmares that no outsider would willingly take on without years of inside knowledge. And for that, I was paid decently. Not extravagantly, just enough to live independently and save a little. When I asked why me and not one of the other managers or redundant staff, they said, "Because we know you'll land on your feet. The others have families to feed." I was stunned. It wasn't even a discussion. No warning, no severance, nothing. Just, "We love you, but you're out. We'll see you at Thanksgiving." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, numb, and nodded while my entire world collapsed. I walked out of the office that day with a box of my things like any other terminated employee, except the difference was, the people firing me were my mom and dad. And the worst part? They genuinely acted like it wasn't a big deal. Like I'd just move on, and we'd all keep being one big happy family. But here's the kicker, I did move on. I got a job offer from a competitor. A bigger, better-funded competitor that has been eating away at my parents' market share for years. They practically snatched me up the second they heard I was available. Now I'm sitting in a position where I can either play it safe and just do my job, or I can actively help my new company take over everything my parents built. And the crazy part? My parents have no idea I'm working for their rival. So yeah, Reddit. Am I the asshole if I don't hold back? If I use everything I know about my parents' company to give my new employers an edge? Because honestly, after what they did to me, part of me feels like they deserve it. When I tell you my new company practically rolled out the red carpet for me, I'm not exaggerating. I interviewed on a Tuesday, got the offer on Thursday, and started the following Monday. Compared to the way my parents tossed me out like last week's trash, the experience was surreal. The competitor, let's call them Everline Supply, had been circling my parents' company for years. They're bigger, sharper, more modern, and have resources that make our old business look like it's stuck in the 90s. I always knew of them, but working there was eye-opening. They had updated systems, actual strategic planning, better benefits, and leaders who didn't think family loyalty excused sloppy operations. On my first day, the VP who hired me, I'll call him Grant, sat me down and said, "We know who you are. We know where you came from, and we know exactly how valuable that makes you. You don't need to prove yourself here. Just show us what you know." That sentence hit me harder than it should have, because my own parents never once said anything like that to me. To them, I was the kid who would eventually take over. Not because I earned it, but because I was theirs. Which also meant they felt comfortable discarding me when things got tight. At Everline, I wasn't the son. I was the guy who had run a 50-person company practically by himself for years. And they treated me accordingly. My salary was nearly 40% higher than what my parents paid me, plus full benefits, stock options, and actual career growth. Here's where things got complicated. I wasn't just an employee. I became their inside man without even trying. My entire skill set was built on intimate knowledge of my parents' company. Its strengths, weaknesses, outdated systems, customer relationships, vendor contracts, you name it. I didn't even have to go out of my way to share it. Just doing my new job naturally highlighted all the areas where Everline could outmaneuver them. And it was working. Within a month, Everline had landed 2 major clients that I knew my parents' company relied on. It wasn't sabotage, I never called those clients directly. But when Everline asked me how those clients operated, what they valued, what pain points they had, I told them the truth. And Everline tailored their pitch perfectly. Meanwhile, I kept hearing from my family that the business is going through a rough patch. My parents complained during Sunday dinners, saying sales were down, competitors were ruthless, and they couldn't understand why loyal clients were suddenly jumping ship. I bit my tongue. I smiled and nodded. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. But here's the twist. As good as it felt to finally be valued, part of me still wondered, was I crossing a line? After all, these weren't strangers. This was my family. People who raised me, fed me, clothed me, and yes, betrayed me. Reddit, I need to be honest here. Half the time, I fantasize about Everline completely destroying my parents' company. I picture the building empty, the logo taken down, the business gone. I imagine my dad's face when he realizes the son he fired is the reason he lost everything. But then I see my mom hugging me after dinner, asking if I'm doing okay financially. And I feel like a monster, because the truth is, she has no idea I'm at Everline. To her, I just found a new opportunity. I don't know if I'm the asshole here. I didn't ask to be put in this position. But now that I am, every move I make feels like revenge, even when it's just me doing my job. 2 months into working at Everline, the changes were undeniable. The company was booming, and I was directly helping make it happen. I didn't even have to try to sabotage my parents' business. Just by streamlining Everline's strategies with the knowledge I already had, they were pulling ahead. Meanwhile, my parents' company was, well, collapsing slowly. I first noticed it at a family dinner. My dad, usually the kind of guy who brags about how resilient his business is, was uncharacteristically quiet. When I asked how work was going, my mom sighed and said, "We lost another account this week. That's 3 in a month. Your father's been stressed to death." Dad just scowled into his glass of whiskey and muttered, "These clients have no loyalty. They'll chase any shiny new offer." I almost choked on my food. Shiny new offer? He meant Everline's offer, the one I'd helped craft. I excused myself to the bathroom just so I could breathe. Because here's the thing, there was this twisted satisfaction bubbling in my chest. Hearing my dad complain about unfair competition, when he was the one who tossed me out like I was disposable, it was karmic poetry. But guilt crept in too. My mom doesn't run the numbers. She doesn't see contracts. She just sees my dad coming home angry and tired, the stress lines on his face deepening every week. She doesn't deserve this fallout. The real confrontation came 2 weeks later. I was out grabbing groceries when I ran into one of my old coworkers from my parents' place. Sarah. She was pale, clearly stressed, and when she saw me, she practically cornered me in the aisle. "Do you know what's going on?" she whispered, eyes darting around like someone might overhear. "Orders are drying up. Half the staff thinks there's going to be layoffs. Your dad won't give us straight answers." I froze. What could I say? That I knew exactly what was happening, because I was helping engineer it? That every lost account was like a personal vindication? Instead, I shrugged and said, "I don't really keep up with things there anymore. Sorry." The look she gave me made my stomach twist, like she thought I was abandoning them. Later that night, I got a call from my dad. His voice was gruff, but there was an edge of desperation I'd never heard before. Listen, I know things ended badly between us, but I need to ask, are you hearing anything out in the industry about why these clients are leaving? I almost laughed. He had no clue. He thought I was just somewhere else, working some average job. He had no idea I was in the very boardroom meetings planning the strategies that were gutting his company. I told him I didn't know anything, that I was just focusing on settling in. He muttered something about hoping it was just a bad quarter and hung up. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, torn in two directions. On one hand, this was the justice I thought I wanted. He fired me, treated me like I was expendable, and now he was finally tasting the consequences. On the other hand, this wasn't just his problem. Employees like Sarah were terrified. Families depended on that paycheck. And if the company went under, it wouldn't just hurt him, it would wipe out dozens of livelihoods. And yet, every time I thought about pulling back, about warning him or even hinting that he needed to modernize, another memory hit me. Sitting in his office as he told me I was the easiest cut because I'd land on my feet, that memory hardened something inside me every single time. So I stayed quiet. It was bound to happen eventually. 3 months into my job at Everline, the cracks in my parents' company weren't just cracks anymore. They were gaping holes. Every family dinner became tense. My dad, who used to dominate conversations with stories about new contracts and expansion, now barely spoke. My mom filled the silence with awkward small talk, but her eyes gave away the worry. The confrontation came on a Saturday afternoon. My mom asked me to stop by, just to catch up. I didn't think much of it. I showed up, and both of them were waiting at the kitchen table, serious expressions plastered across their faces. Felt like an intervention. My dad cleared his throat. "Son, we need to ask you something, and we want the truth." I braced myself. "Okay. Are you working for Everline?" he asked flatly. For a split second, my heart stopped. My brain went into overdrive. Had they found out? Did someone see me at a conference? Did one of their clients mention me by name? I played dumb. "Why would you ask that?" My dad leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "Because Everline has been picking us apart piece by piece. They know exactly where to hit us. They're not just competing, they're targeting. And you know our business better than anyone else. If I were them, you'd be the first person I'd hire." My mom put a hand on his arm like she was trying to soften his words. "We're not accusing you. We need to know. Please tell us you're not involved." The guilt punched me straight in the chest. My mom's voice cracked as she said it, and part of me wanted to break down right there, confess everything, and beg forgiveness. But then I looked at my dad, the same man who didn't hesitate to toss me out when it was convenient for him, the same man who chose cutting costs over his own son. His eyes weren't full of hurt. They were full of suspicion, distrust, like I was already guilty. So I lied. "No, I'm not working for Everline," I said evenly. "I found another job, but it's not with them. I wouldn't do that to you." My mom exhaled in relief, but my dad didn't buy it. He just stared at me, jaw tight, like he was trying to read my mind. "Because if you are," he said slowly, "you'd be destroying your own family, everything we've built." I didn't flinch. I just met his gaze and said, "I'm not with them." The conversation ended there, but the tension lingered. As I left, my mom hugged me tighter than usual. My dad didn't say a word, just watched me walk out like a man still calculating. Driving home, my hands were shaking, not because I was scared they'd find out, but because I realized something. For the first time in my life, I held the power. My dad suspected me, but he had no proof. And even if he did, what could he do? Fire me again? Disown me? He'd already played that card. And the truth? A dark, petty part of me wanted him to know. I wanted him to realize that the disposable son he tossed aside was now the very person dismantling his empire brick by brick. But I also knew if I confessed now, it wouldn't just hurt him. It would shatter my mom. And despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to do that. Not yet. So I doubled down on the lie. And every day at Everline, I pushed harder. More strategies, more client pitches, more nails in the coffin of my parents' business. If my dad wanted a war, I was ready to finish it. By the 4th month at Everline, I wasn't just settling in. I was thriving. Grant, my VP, was practically parading me around as the company's golden hire. Every meeting, every pitch, he'd glance my way for insight, and I always had an answer. It was like everything I'd done in my parents' company had been practice for this moment. And then came the big one. One of my parents' most important contracts was with a mid-sized retailer I'll call North Point. They'd been with my family's company for over a decade, practically a pillar account. I knew every detail about how they operated, what discounts kept them loyal, what delivery schedules they preferred, even which sales reps they hated. When Everline started eyeing them, Grant asked, "Any insight here?" I hesitated for maybe 5 seconds. Then I laid it all out. Every vulnerability, every gripe, every way we could undercut my parents without even breaking a sweat. The pitch Everline delivered was flawless. 2 weeks later, North Point jumped ship. And just like that, my parents lost nearly 20% of their revenue. I didn't hear about it from them directly. I heard it from Sarah, the same coworker I'd bumped into months ago. She texted me late one night, "Layoffs. They're cutting staff. People are freaking out." My stomach twisted as I read it, because while I was sipping whiskey in my new apartment, celebrating another win, my old coworkers were packing their desks into cardboard boxes. People I'd worked alongside for years, people who once looked at me as the future boss, were now unemployed because I'd handed their account to the competition. That guilt hit hard, for about a day. Then I remembered sitting in that office, my dad saying coldly, "You'll land on your feet." And suddenly, I didn't feel guilty anymore. The next family dinner was brutal. My mom looked exhausted, her smile forced. My dad was quiet, his face red like he'd been yelling all week. At one point, my mom said, "We had to let some good people go. It's breaking my heart." My dad just muttered, "It's the cost of survival." Then he turned to me, his eyes sharp. "You'd tell us if you were working with Everline, right?" I forced a laugh. "Dad, you already asked me that. And I didn't believe you then either," he shot back. The room went silent. My mom gave him a warning look, but he just kept staring at me. "You know too much. They're hitting us too precisely. If you're behind this, stop." My mom snapped. "He said he's not. That's enough." I didn't say another word. I just sat there, letting him stew in suspicion. Part of me wanted to shout, "Yes, it's me. I'm the one tearing you down. How's it feel?" But instead, I just smiled faintly and finished my meal. That night, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just helping Everline win anymore. I was starting to enjoy watching my parents lose. And the worst part? My dad knew it even if he couldn't prove it. By the time North Point jumped ship, my parents' company was bleeding. Everyone in the industry could smell it. Once a business shows weakness, the vultures circle fast. Everline wasn't the only competitor making moves, but we were the sharpest. I thought I'd feel satisfied watching from the sidelines, but then something happened I never imagined. My parents asked me for help. It started with a text from my mom. "Can you come by the office tomorrow? We need to talk." I almost didn't go, but curiosity got the better of me. So the next day, I walked back into that building for the first time since they'd fired me. The place felt different, quieter. Half the desks were empty. People avoided eye contact. The energy was gone. When I reached my dad's office, both he and my mom were waiting. My dad looked worse than I'd ever seen him. Hollow eyes, shoulders slumped, like a man carrying a weight too heavy. My mom looked like she'd been crying. "Son," my dad said, his voice gravelly, "we're in trouble. You know that already." I nodded, pretending ignorance. "I've heard things. We need your help." My mom cut in. "You know this business better than anyone. If you came back, even part-time, just to advise us, it could make a difference." I almost laughed in his face. The same man who'd sat me down months ago and said I was expendable was now asking for my advice. But I didn't laugh. I kept my expression neutral. "Why me?" You said I was the easiest to cut. My dad winced. That was a mistake. I thought we were protecting the others. But it's clear now you were holding more together than we realized. Hearing him admit that stung in ways I didn't expect. For years, I wanted nothing more than for him to recognize my value. And now that he finally did, it was only because he was drowning. I have a new job, I said carefully. I can't just walk away. My mom leaned forward, eyes pleading. We're not asking you to quit. Just consult. Please. We'll pay you, of course. Just help us stop the bleeding. I could feel my dad's pride choking him as he said, We'll double what we paid you before. Just give us a few hours a week. And that's when it hit me. I held all the cards. I could walk away and let them sink. Or I could step in, dangle some advice, and keep them on life support. But here's the thing. Part of me wanted to watch them beg. To drag it out. To make my dad choke on his pride every time he asked for my opinion. To make him feel the humiliation I felt the day he fired me. So I didn't give them an answer right away. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and said, I'll think about it. My dad's jaw clenched, but he nodded. My mom whispered, Thank you, like I'd already agreed. As I walked out of that office, every employee stared at me. Some with hope, some with resentment, some with desperation. It was like they saw me as the prodigal son returning to save them. But the truth? I wasn't sure if I wanted to save anyone. Driving home, I realized I was at a crossroads. I could extend a hand and keep them afloat, or I could keep pressing until they drowned completely. And for the first time, I wasn't sure which option felt more satisfying. I didn't rush to give them an answer. Instead, I let them stew for a full week. My mom sent a few gentle texts. Any thoughts yet? We're just anxious to hear. While my dad stayed silent, which told me everything. He hated needing me, hated depending on the son he'd discarded. Finally, I agreed to meet them again. This time, instead of coming to their office, I told them to meet me at a coffee shop near my apartment. It wasn't a power move I consciously planned, but the moment I saw them walk in, looking tired and worn, and realized they were entering my space on my terms, I felt it. I was the one in control now. They sat across from me, both with polite smiles that looked forced. My dad opened with his usual bluntness. Have you thought about our offer? I sipped my coffee slowly before answering. I have, but I need to be clear about a few things. My mom leaned forward eagerly. Of course, anything. One, I said. If I help, I'm not doing grunt work. I'm not just patching holes. I want decision-making authority. No second-guessing. My dad's jaw tightened. You'd have input, yes, but... No. I cut him off. Authority. Otherwise, I'm just wasting my time. The silence stretched. My mom glanced at him nervously, and finally he gave a stiff nod. Two, I continued. I want it in writing. A consulting contract. Clear compensation, and no arbitrary firing this time. My mom quickly agreed, but my dad's expression darkened. He hated this. Every word I spoke was another bite out of his pride. And three, I said, letting the moment hang. I want transparency. Full access to your books, contracts, and client communications. If you want me to fix this, I need to see everything. My dad's hands clenched around his coffee cup so tight I thought it might crack. For him, those books were sacred. He controlled them, guarded them, and even I never had full access before. That's a lot, he muttered. It's what you need, I replied. My mom, desperate, jumped in. We can work something out. We'll draft the paperwork. I nodded, hiding the small surge of satisfaction in my chest. Because here's the truth. I didn't actually need any of this. Everline was doing fine without me playing both sides. But pushing my parents like this wasn't about business anymore. It was about making them acknowledge my worth. About making my dad choke on every ounce of arrogance he'd once thrown at me. A week later, I had a signed contract in hand. My dad couldn't even look me in the eye when he slid it across the table. My mom smiled weakly, trying to pretend this was just family working together again. And just like that, I was officially back in the building. Not as an employee, Not as a son doing chores, but as a paid consultant with more leverage than I'd ever dreamed of. Walking through those doors, I saw the way people looked at me, half relief, half suspicion. Whispers followed me down the hall. He's back. Do you think he'll save us? The irony? They didn't know the truth. They thought I was their lifeline, but I was the very reason they were sinking. And now, I had full access to their inner workings. The same access I could feed directly to Everline if I wanted. The first day I walked back into my parents' office under that new contract, it felt surreal. Everyone's eyes followed me. Some looked relieved, like the prodigal son had returned to save them. Others looked bitter, probably wondering why I was welcomed back when they'd seen loyal coworkers laid off. I didn't correct any assumptions. Let them believe what they wanted. Officially, I was there as a consultant. Unofficially, I was a double agent. Every meeting, every report, every spreadsheet I reviewed gave me more ammunition for Everline. And no one suspected a thing. My mom was almost overly grateful, constantly thanking me for coming back. She made me lunch, fussed over whether I looked tired, asked if I was eating well, and that made me feel like the world's biggest fraud. Because while she was hugging me in the break room, I was memorizing which contracts were expiring soon so I could tip Everline off. My dad, on the other hand, barely spoke to me. He sat through meetings with his jaw tight, arms crossed, only grunting when I made suggestions. But he never overruled me, not after the contract I forced him to sign. That was my quiet victory. Every nod from him, every time he had to bite back a comment, was proof that he knew he needed me. The employees, though, were the hardest part. Sarah, who'd always been one of the most dedicated, approached me one afternoon with tears in her eyes. "People think you're the only one who can turn this around," she said quietly. "They're scared. If this place goes under, it's not just jobs, it's families, mortgages, kids in college." That hit me harder than I expected, because it wasn't just about my dad anymore. There were dozens of people hanging in the balance. People who had nothing to do with my firing. People who believed in me, and yet couldn't stop. Every night after leaving my parents' office, I'd debrief with Grant at Everline. I never outright said, "Here's how to crush them." I didn't need to. Just pointing out inefficiencies or risks gave Everline the map, and they followed it to the letter. One example. I noticed my parents' company relied heavily on a single shipping partner who was notorious for delays. I flagged it as a potential vulnerability. A week later, Everline rolled out a campaign boasting faster, guaranteed deliveries, and clients noticed. My dad came storming into the office one morning, slamming a competitor's brochure onto the table. "How the hell are they undercutting us at every turn?" I sat there, hiding the smirk threatening to break across my face, and shrugged. "Maybe you should have modernized sooner." The look he gave me could have cut steel. But he didn't argue because deep down he knew I was right. Here's the twisted part. I started to like the game. Walking the tightrope between consultant son and inside man. Smiling at my mom while forwarding insights to Everline. Shaking hands with employees while silently planning the moves that would end their jobs. But late at night, lying in bed, the guilt gnawed at me. Not for my dad, he made his bed. Not even for my mom, though her kindness tore at me. It was for people like Sarah, who looked me in the eye and believed I was their savior. Because one day soon, they'd realize I wasn't saving them at all. I was the one loading the bullets. It didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, like watching a slow-motion car crash. But by the time the third quarter reports came in, it was undeniable. My parents' company was collapsing. Sales were down nearly 50% from the previous year. Key clients were gone. Vendors were hesitant to extend credit. And worst of all, morale among employees had cratered. People whispered in hallways, rumors ran rampant, and some even came crying to me, pleading for guidance. I wanted to tell them the truth. I wanted to scream, "I've been the one behind it all." But I couldn't. Not yet. That revelation would destroy my mom entirely and turn my dad into a maniacal, vengeful wreck. Instead, I kept acting like the consultant they'd begged for, offering advice, holding meetings, smiling reassuringly. Every nod of gratitude from my mom felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Every grudging acknowledgement from my dad fueled a quiet satisfaction I hated admitting. Then came the moment that really made me realize how far things had gone. I got a call from Everline. They'd landed another major client, a contract that would have been the crown jewel of my parents' company. I told Grant the details, strategically omitting nothing, and he promised me the deal would close within the week. A day later, my dad stormed into my office at the company, red-faced and shaking. "This can't be happening," he shouted. "We're bleeding clients every day, and nothing we try works. Are you seeing this? Is this sabotage?" I just sat there, keeping my expression neutral. "I'm only here to help, Dad. I'm giving you my best advice." "You say that," he snapped, "but it feels like every move we make is being countered before we even finish. How is this happening?" I shrugged. "Maybe the market is just more competitive than you thought." He froze, staring at me like he was trying to read my mind. My mom's voice trembled from the doorway. "Please, let's not fight in front of the staff." And in that moment, I realized the full extent of the chaos I'd caused. This wasn't just numbers on a spreadsheet anymore. It was people losing their livelihoods. My parents' pride crushed under the weight of reality. My mom on the verge of tears every time she spoke about the company. My dad looking helpless in a way I'd never seen before. And yet, part of me couldn't stop. I had all the power now, and watching them squirm gave me a sense of justice I hadn't felt in years. But guilt still lingered. Sarah and the other employees, they trusted me. They believed I was the savior. And the truth was, I was the destroyer. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at my laptop, wondering if I had gone too far. And for the first time, I wondered, if I pushed just a little more, could I completely destroy the company I grew up in? Or would that finally make me the monster I was starting to feel like? Because at this point, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about control. Pure, unrelenting control. And control is a dangerous thing. It all came to a head 3 weeks later. My parents' company was barely hanging on. Employees on edge, clients lost, vendors hesitant. My dad finally called me into his office alone, his face pale and exhausted. "Tell me the truth," he said, voice shaking. "Are you working for Everline? Are you the reason everything is falling apart?" I looked him square in the eye. For a moment, I felt the familiar rush of power, the same feeling I'd chased since that first day they fired me. "I told you, Dad," I said evenly. "I'm only here to help." "You're lying," he said flatly. "I can feel it. The way things are happening, everything we've built. It's like someone's dismantling it from the inside. And you know things no outsider could know. I held up a hand. "If I wanted to destroy this company, I could. Every weakness, every inefficiency, every frustrated client. You know it's true. But I haven't done that. I'm consulting just like we agreed." He stared at me, a storm of anger, betrayal, and disbelief in his eyes. "You could have destroyed us and didn't. But why did you let us bleed so long? Why make us beg for your help?" "Because the truth? I wanted them to feel what I felt when they fired me. I wanted them to understand the weight of being discarded. But I also didn't want to hurt my mom. I wanted you to understand how much I contributed," I said quietly. "I wanted you to see me, not just as your son, but as someone who mattered in this business." My mom walked in then, pale and anxious. "Please, stop blaming each other. We need to fix this." I sighed. "I will help, but I need boundaries, authority, respect, just like we agreed." And for the first time in months, my dad nodded. Silent, grudging, but it was acknowledgement. Everline continued to take the larger market share, but I started steering clients back, giving my parents' company a chance to stabilize. Slowly, they began rebuilding, but they were never the same. Pride shattered, trust fractured, lessons painfully learned. Now, sitting here writing this, Reddit, I can't help but wonder, AITA? Am I the asshole for letting them suffer to make a point? Am I the asshole for enjoying the leverage I held over the people who hurt me? Or was I justified, after years of being discarded by my own parents, to assert my value in the most extreme way possible. I never cheated, lied to Everline, or stole anything outright. I used knowledge they gave me intentionally or unintentionally to advance my career. But I also let them face the consequences of their decisions, consequences they never thought would reach them. I'm torn between pride and guilt. I saved some lives, employees, the company itself, but I also became the thing I hated. Someone capable of hurting the people who should have trusted me most. So Reddit, AITA,